Afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it a few more minutes. We are expecting one or two others, so thank you for your patience, and we'll start in a few minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, on behalf of the Drennan family, a really warm welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I know they really appreciate it, and you'll hear that later as well. We are joined on live stream by people from all over the world. Last time I checked, there was New Zealand, Australia, America, Canada, Sweden, and the UK. I know there are people from all over South Africa that are tuned in. So whilst we have the privilege of being here, we're joined by an online army. So welcome wherever you are to today's service. I'd also like to introduce myself. My name's Keith. Denis was a mentor and friend to me for 40 plus years. You might look at me and say, well, he failed miserably, and he probably did. But I had a privilege of working closely with Denis for a good half of those. And so That's why I've got the privilege of holding this space for us all today. And so thank you, Beth, Steve, and Craig, for entrusting me with that. I think there are 4 reasons why we're all here today. And the first one is obviously to pay respect and tribute and celebrate together just a remarkable life. And so we're here for Denis. And as I came in and saw his smiling picture, I kind of wondered to myself what he would have made of this. And we're here for Denis. But there's a second reason, of course, and we're here for the Drennan family, and in particular Beth and Craig and Steve. And we want them to know of our love and our support, which has already started before today, and I have no doubt will continue and be sustainable beyond this day. But we're here for you as a family. The third reason we're here is for each other. As we look around and as I look over this, I see faces I haven't seen for a long time, faces I love and respect. And it's wonderful that we're together again. And that's, again, maybe a gift Denis has given us, that he's brought this motley crew together. And so as you look around and you connect with people that you haven't seen for a long time, we're here for each other. And then I want to suggest that we're here for ourselves as well. Maybe one of the gifts that Denis gives us by us being here is a reminder of our own mortality. There's a British poet by the name of David White who says that we need to apprentice ourselves to the curve of our own disappearance. And so as we sit here today, we are reminded of our own mortality, and what we do with those thoughts and reflections as we reflect on this remarkable life of Denis, I'm sure will lead to good things as well. Later, we're going to have an opportunity, you're going to have an opportunity to share some anecdotal stories as well of memories that you have of Denis. And we're doing that not necessarily for you, but for the family. I think it's important that Beth and the boys get to hear aspects of their husband, the father, the grandfather, the friend that we all loved. And so if you've got a story that is funny or sad or a memory you think would sustain and support us, please won't you get up and just share it when I invite you later. And so you might want to start recollecting some stories or something worthwhile that you would like to share as we go through. We've got a very simple order of process today. And in a short while, I'm going to read a eulogy that Beth has put together of Denis's life and who Denis was. Then Beth will come up and share a few words. After Beth, we'll have Summer, Denis's granddaughter, one of them, and she will speak on behalf of all the grandchildren. Then Steve will come. We'll have Rowley. We've got Medissa, who will speak for one of Denis's friends, Far. And then lastly, Ziggy will come up and speak on behalf of Carleen. So that's how we'll go. And after we've got through that and listened and reflected, we'll have an opportunity for you to share whatever it is you would like to. So with that, let me read the eulogy that Beth has prepared. Denis Cameron Drennan was born to Cecil and Gwen Drennan on the 12th of April, 1947 in Pietermaritzburg. He had an older brother, Robin, and a younger brother, Ian. He went to Murchison Primary and then on to Maritzburg College. He was not a team sports player, but enjoyed running. He was a member of St. John's Ambulance and a leader of the school Christian Union. He did not enjoy school. That's probably a bit of an underestimate there, Beth. But went on to study in Pretoria and qualified as a soil conservation technician. He loved his job in Newcastle. It involved being outdoors and meeting farmers. He met Beth Jenkins when he was 17, and just to clarify, she wasn't a farmer, and she was 16. They fell in love, which lasted 60 years, with 54 of those in marriage. He always felt the call to help people, love and motivate them. He joined Youth for Christ in 1972. Whatever he did with great enthusiasm and hard work. His son Craig was born in 1973 and Steve was born in 1975. After 5 years in the ministry, he realized that he needed more training, so the family went to Briarcrest Bible College in Canada for 2.5 years. He loved the experience of living in a cold country and meeting people from other cultures. He worked on Beth's sister's farm in the summer, driving huge machinery. On his return to South Africa, Pietermaritzburg, he so badly wanted to work in the outdoors with young people. Denis started Youth for Christ in Maritzburg in 1980, but his heart was always in the outdoors. A miracle happened, and the farm Labrie was offered to him to use. I remember Denis and I driving out to see Labrie for the first time on the offer and walking around and getting so excited about the possibilities of that. It was like it was yesterday. Sorry, that's me ad-libbing, not what Beth said. To those wonderful years, he used his skills to develop a beautiful outdoor center. The associate staff were great, and many teenagers had the most exciting, fun, meaningful time of their lives there. He was so good at what he did. He lived by faith for all those years. Money and luxuries meant very little to him. At 60 years of age, he left Youth for Christ, and he and his son Craig started a similar outdoor center at Hella Hella in the Umkomaas Valley. Again, he gave his all and poured himself into all he came into contact with. At the age of 70, and because of the land claim problems, he and Craig sadly closed it down. Craig married Katrina, and they have 4 children and now live in Sweden. Steve married Kim, and they have 3 children, and they live in Kloof. His legacy lives on in them. Never one to sit still, he became involved with In-House, a small school in Maryvale that Steve Walters had started on the Wedgwood farm. He once again enjoyed being involved with teenagers, when after about 3 years that too was closed. He started his own little school called Compass. This was started specifically for teenagers who faced challenges. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with melanoma in his neck in 2020. He recovered, but 2 years later, it had spread and gone to his lungs and liver. He was on good medication for a year, and we were thankful to have that time together. It then went to his brain, and he deteriorated quite quickly. He began losing his eyesight, speech, and swallowing ability, but was only really sick for 2 weeks. Denis was considerate and kind in both life and death. He passed away peacefully in the afternoon of Saturday, July the 20th. What a beautiful, kind, helpful, and caring man. Rest in peace. Your legacy lives on in these people. Thank you, Beth. Can I call on Beth to come up? And I know Sally's coming with her, as Beth would like to say a few words.
My beloved Den, I don't know what I did to be the wife of such an amazing man. It was a privilege to be his wife and be loved by him. When we met at the start of the Comrades Marathon in 1965, we were both still at school. His blue eyes spoke to my heart, and he became the love of my life, my soulmate and my rock. He once rode on his bicycle all the way from Pietermaritzburg to visit me at the beach in Durban. He was only able to spend half an hour with me, and then he had to ride back again. What a man. We married in 1969 when I was 21 and he was 22. We lived in Newcastle and had so many good, fun years. We welcomed Craig and Steve into our lives. We started our annual camping holiday and did this for 54 years, using a tent, then a caravan, then a bakkie mate, and lastly, our very tiny camper van. How Den loved sitting around a campfire beneath the stars. He was also brave enough to drive an old Volkswagen camper van over a big section of Europe. We had a wonderful few years in Canada at Briarcrest Bible School. Denis enjoyed working the land as a farmer. I don't think he enjoyed his biblical studies as much, but got his diploma. He worked for Youth for Christ when he returned, but his heart was always on playing with teenagers in the bush. This he was able to do when he received the gift of Labrie and later at Hella Hella. My greatest gift to him was to love him enough to free him up so that he had enough time and energy to love others. He loved helping, caring, and bringing positivity into people's lives. He was a deeply spiritual man. He loved to get up early in the morning to meditate and be still so that when he faced the day, he was ready for any challenge. He really cared for me, especially when I have struggled with pain. He must have given me hundreds of massages. He loved to make tea or coffee for anyone who came to our home. Our home was a peaceful place. I think we only argued when we worked in the garden as to where certain plants should be planted. He loved gardening and was very creative. His last duty about 3 weeks ago was to prune all the 17 roses. Just after that, he became really sick. I helped him a lot during the early days of his youth work, especially at Labrie. But he returned the favor by helping me so much, setting up 13 libraries in the Midlands. He got very good at putting up shelves and throwing away a lot of old books. I could not have done it without him. We were a team. Denis never complained and never criticized others. He always looked for the good in everyone. His joy in life was helping others. He always made a plan, no matter how bad the situation was. He remained calm, whatever the situation. He was not a perfect man. If you got into the car with Denis, you knew you were in for an exciting ride. He drove fast, but drove well. His tolerance of poor drivers, his opinion, was very limited. He seldom got angry. He was angry about the political system that was hurting his Zulu-speaking friends. Denis was always so strong physically, and when he did a job, he did it quickly, no messing around, and well. He loved hard physical work and would sweat profusely. He loved our dogs and was always faithful in walking them and feeding them. They loved him in return. Denis was not a saint, but he was like Jesus. He was a real man and was not afraid to be different. He had not worn a watch for about 30 years. He was not a drinker of alcohol and was happy being who he was. He did have self-esteem problems because of his poor school records, but he slowly overcame them. Later in life, he loved to read, mainly biographies and books that had deep meaning. He loved to talk about philosophy and the meaning of life. I think this is the one area where I failed him because I could not always grasp his ideas. The last series of books he was reading was Conversations with God by Donald Walsh. He can now talk to God face to face. He loved adventure and trying new things. He was not scared to tackle the unknown. He was a flesh and blood man. He loved a good joke and often used to embarrass me by telling a dirty joke. Denis hated waste. He used to turn the chutney bottle upside down to get out the very last drops. He had a strong aversion to shopping, so if I managed to get him into a clothing shop, I'd persuade him to buy as much clothing as possible because it might be years before I could get him back to shop again. Denis was a good-looking man, known to some as the camel man. He loved to be clean and neat. Denis loved his Zulu-speaking friends. A while ago, I asked him where he wanted his memorial service to be held. He just said, "Make it easy for my Zulu friends to attend." Denis had a way with words. He loved to write things down. He recently did a course called Journeys of Awakenings, and he faithfully did his homework every week. What a joy I have had over the last few days as I have read his journal and many thoughts about life and love. In fact, I think he started writing a journal about 30 years ago. They're all in the cupboard. 3.5 years ago, he was diagnosed with melanoma cancer. He had spent too much time in the sun and was not fond of sun cream. We had a few years of normal life and did manage to prepare for the inevitable. When we heard that the cancer had gone to the brain, we realized that this was not good news, but he was so brave and calm and never wanted me to worry. A few days before he died, he said to me, "I think my mission on earth is over." 4 weeks ago, he was unable to speak properly. He was only really sick for 2 weeks, and most of that time was spent in hospital, which was such a relief. He had no pain. He took 2 Panada about 3 weeks before he died. After that, he took nothing for pain. Near the end, we only managed to communicate with his thumb on his left hand. His right side was paralyzed. Many of his family and friends were able to visit him near the end. He died peacefully, being loved right to the last moment. I know he appreciated every one of you. To know Denis was to love him. I think Denis would not really want you to remember the man as such, but rather the things that he did. In other words, be kind to all, be helpful, be positive, love your families, enjoy nature, make a difference in our difficult times. I love you, my darling. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you, Beth. We were talking with the family yesterday, and I said I have shared so many lows and highs with Denis over the years, and I can't remember anything he really said. Not because he had nothing to say, but he was present. Denis was there, and I'm sure many of you can attest to that. Denis just showed up, and he was there. Summer, thank you. Come up and share on behalf of the grandchildren.
Hi everyone. I would like to read some messages from my cousins living in Sweden. Grandpa, this is a very hard letter for me to write, as I feel like there's so much for me to say and too few words to be able to formulate it all. Not understating it when I say that I'm truly blessed to have you and only you as my grandpa. You have shaped me more as a person than I reckon anyone can comprehend, and I can confidently say that I would not be who I am today without your influence in my life. Your way of thinking and view on life should be adapted by everyone in all generations that are now and that are to come. You are loved and cherished by everyone around you, especially me. I'm thinking of you and all the good memories of you. Love, Hunter. It is only now that I feel sorry for the other kids who didn't grow up with the peppermint jar, Friday night TV with Tutu and Zoe, and of course, you two. And to all the other kids who didn't grow up with Denis Drennan, all I can say is that they missed something special. Thanks for being there, both as guardians and as supporters. I will never forget stepping into your previous house, stepping into a house full of love, wonder, and curiosity. There was always music playing on the TV. I remember you and Gogo's luscious garden, all the exotic flowers and plants. You and Gogo could enjoy the beauty in life. The seemingly ordinary to us would be a wonder to you two. Love, Aaron. For me, one of my fondest memories of Grandpa is when we were staying at Latini. Grandpa was taking Maddie and Grayson on a hike, and I didn't want to go with them, but in the end they convinced me, and I'm so glad that they did. We ended up getting insanely lost, going over way too many hills. Grayson was crying and Maddie was scared, but Grandpa was there, encouraging us the whole way. After crossing a massive cold river, we finally made it back to the cottages, soaking wet and freezing, but happy to have had another adventure with Grandpa. Maddie will always remember all of the Christmases we spent together, the delicious meals we ate together gathered around the dinner table, enjoying Grandpa's stories and the quality streets, which would always be a part of our Christmas gift. And Grayson's favorite memory is all the drives he took with Grandpa around the Ambers, looking for all the different types of animals you can find here. Thank you.
Thanks, Summer. Steve?
Hello, everybody. So many people. I normally enjoy walking if I get nervous. Looks like I'm fixed. So, for one that cried at my wedding when I spoke, please expect a bit of drama. I'd like to express a little bit of what I thought over the last 2 weeks. In the sales world, we use a tool to overcome difficult challenges, and it's called the bun patty bun approach, where we start with the positive, and then we have the difficult conversations in the middle, and then we end with positive and a little pat on the back. So my pattied bun today is made up of memories, difficult conversations and positive outcomes, and then lastly to discuss the legacy of Denis. In thinking about this and memories, I first thought of Uncle Ian. He's known my dad for the longest. And yesterday we were comparing notes about memories, and for some reason I spoke about a bicycle accident that I had in Lindup Road, where I damaged a car on my bicycle and lost my front tooth. And Ian said, "Your dad had an accident in Lindup Road." And he missed a corner, went through a hedge, and landed up in hospital with a broken skull. And that subsequently, Ian tells me, resulted in some challenges at school, which some might say resulted in further challenges for Denis down the line with regards to his belief in himself. Keith, thanks for yesterday with the great laughs of the pranks that you and Denis and the rest of the team used to play on each other. I particularly enjoyed the story of sticking a poster up on the back of his office door. And Denis had an open door policy, so the door often wasn't closed. And he had a minister come from outside to come and meet with him, and he closed the door. Of course, there's this picture on the back of the door, and everybody's waiting to see how he can get to the door before the minister sees what's on the back of the door. So, and there were many of those types of things, with including dishwashing liquid in Listerine bottles, where you plant the prank and wait for ages for it to pull off. That was really good to laugh and to learn about Denis. Mum, so many memories. What was very special for me was seeing you with Dad over the last 3 weeks. And he knows that he was incredibly loved. The years of Youth Week, the incredible youth camps up in the Magaliesberg, the roller rinks at the YMCA, where I still remember feeling very, very proud that my dad was Denis, and he was the one who was part of organizing these events. And then there were the Labrie years. I think Labrie is a massive part of Denis's legacy. And we worked out this morning, those were 21 years of various people coming through as staff members, various associate staff people coming through to lead programs, and then of course there were the thousands of young people that came through the doors and had life-changing experiences. And then of course there's my personal memories. Dad taught me to fish, something which is still very close to my heart. I still remember going on Dad's back in a rucksack which had a backrest, exploring rivers and spending hours watching him fish. I was holding the rod when he was having a leak, and I had the first bite of a fish. The years and years that he supported me with my sport and cycling, and then of course the holidays and the famous VW Fox. Now this car, it's a pity it's not around anymore. However, the Fox which Denis and Beth owned was incredible. I'm going to recall a few memories. One was down the Wild Coast, where we decided that the fishing was going to be better in a river which was further south, and a long way to walk, we decided to take the Fox. Now generally foxes don't go over riverbeds, but But this one went and then had to turn around. And we jacked up the car, we put rocks underneath, and we built a track out to get where we came from. And I'll never forget Denis taking 3 turns to get out, and the third one was full throttle. And this car was bouncing up those rocks, and we got out. The other one was going to Northern Natal Mabibi campsite, which states very clearly on their website that it's for 4x4s and 2x4s. But the VW Fox was going. And not only that, but it was going with a trailer. And if you've ever been to Mabibi, it's made up of a whole network of roads which ultimately lead to the same place, or lead to the same place. And there was one section where the road kind of disappeared, but the grass had been burnt and it was fairly clear. So the operation was to drive as fast as possible through the sandy field. And at the bottom of the field, the car stopped. And Denis got out, we opened the boot, and he said, "This is not good." We had to unhitch the trailer, but more importantly, inside the engine, something was dramatically wrong. And Denis tied together the problem with a blue ski rope. I'll never forget it. And we got there. In Mozambique, left the car radio on. No worse feeling than getting back in the car and it's completely dead. It's okay. Denis found a Samel. The Samel battery on a VW Fox works really well. And we were okay. It was coming down Van Rennen's Pass, hitting a truck's axle, 2 flat wheels. But it was okay because Denis hitchhiked to the top of the garage and we were okay. So many, many memories where I just remember thinking, it's all going to be okay. Dad's here. So that's the bun. Good memories. And I'm sure you all have your own. With regards to the difficult conversations and the positive outcomes, Gran lived to 104 years old, and she passed a year and 2 weeks ago. And I always thought that Dad would live to be at least 90. And Mom has said she can't imagine Dad being old and decrepit. So something I wrestled with was the whole issue of being gone too soon. And when Robin Williams died, that's what they said, gone too soon. But for Dad, I really felt that it was true. Then, of course, the argument of why bad things happen to good people. And we know Denis wasn't a bad person. So the only answer that could make sense to this, and I still remember lying in Mom's single bed in the snow angel position with my arms out open. And when I had that realization, I started to see the positive in what was happening. The only answer that made any sense is that he was needed in heaven more than earth. And the picture that went in my mind was, Denis gets to heaven, there's going to be fields of people that need help. Specifically young people. Sorry. Sorry, let me do that closer to the mic. So, over the last 2 weeks, after I had that realization, I started to see the positives. Number one, as Keith has said, it brings people together. And over the last 2 weeks, I've had the privilege of seeing some very old friends. It's also a complete positive that Dad was only sick for so short a time, and that he had no pain and long suffering. I believe that it makes you love more. I believe that you express your words to people, whereas you wouldn't normally do so. And I'm very proud of what Dad and I spoke about. It gave me an opportunity to understand Dad better. And I'm going to discuss his journals in a little bit. However, moving on to the bun at the bottom of the burger is to discuss Dad's legacy. Mom alluded to say about Dad's final mission, and the fact that he said, "I think my mission on earth is over." Dad used his weaknesses to identify with others to make a positive difference. I believe that he had a gift that was empowered by being outdoors, the perfect environment for self-discovery and development. The mission that Denis refers to is the part of Labrie which is called Scarborough. And Denis and I chatted about it, and on the same night that Mom mentioned about Dad and him not being able to complete his mission. Mom, I doubt it was on purpose, but this was next to the bed. And I read through it, and I realized that this is a massive part of Dad's legacy. Reading in Dad's journals last night, and by the way, there's 15 of these. I had no idea that Dad was so disciplined. I had no idea that he recorded so many thoughts. And it's very, very powerful to read these, because Dad was an incredibly godly man. In this journal, in 2005, he wrote that he felt responsible for YFC and Labrie not expanding, and that this was a question that he wanted to ask God one day, if he was responsible for it not expanding. So today here, we've got some important part of the Labrie staff from years and years gone by. But also we have Ernest. Ernest is currently the man holding the reins at Labrie, and I know that Ernest and my dad were incredibly close. Ernest actually got the top visitor badge for when Dad was sick in hospital at the end, and I saw the massive love and respect that they had for each other. Also here we've got Ian Pearson, who is somebody that's been involved with Labrie for many, many years as a youngster, and he's also had his children spend a lot of time at Scarborough, and they have got a volunteer group of about 16 people that are determined to fulfill Dad's mission and make it a place where positive change can continue to be rolled out and affect people's lives. During all of the times at Labrie, I remember there was one common golden thread, and that was the discussion around the balanced life and the spokes in the wheel, and how it's important that we challenge young people, we get them into the bush, but we put massive emphasis on the importance of being balanced from an emotional point of view, a spiritual point of view, and then obviously from a physical point of view. And I think that's something that will never ever disappear from the approach that Labrie has taken. So having said that, anybody who wants to get involved and support that mission going forwards, you're welcome to reach out to me, Ernest or Ian. If you could just stand. Ernest, there you are at the back. And Ian, I noticed you didn't stand, Ernest. Thanks for everything that you were to my dad. I know that he appreciated you, and vice versa. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I think one of your dad's outstanding legacies at Labrie was constructing this harebrained idea of a zip line. And the only thing stopping you going off a sheer cliff at the end was a kind of very flimsy net and some tires. And we convinced a corporate client once to come out. Needless to say, the braking effectiveness worked. The other thing of the zip line was Frank, who's here, going down without any clothes on. It was an all-male event, but yeah, your dad left an incredible legacy at Labrie, and hopefully it's been dismantled now for health and safety reasons. Rolly, would you like to come up, and Rolly's going to speak on behalf of Craig.
Good day, everybody. What a legacy. The fact that you're all here attests to that. I've known Denis for many years. I've come through the Labrie days. I arrived as a rogue operator in 1991. I wrote Denis a letter and I said, I'm coming. I'll see you in such and such a time. Such and such a time arrived. I got off the bus at the publicity house and they couldn't believe it. They suddenly had a problem on their hands, myself. I got in the Flying Fox, got taken to Labrie very, very fast and deposited there in a leaking caravan in September. So the Natal Midlands in September is not a pretty place. Anyway, so I've known the family for many years. I've worked with Denis, and I've also had the privilege to spend some time with him just before he left us some 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to read some thoughts for Craig on behalf of Craig. Yeah, thank you. Bear with me. Okay, some thoughts on Dad and the Denis, the person you knew. I arrived to be able to speak with Dad the last day he was conscious and was able to tell him these things briefly about what he was like as a father. There were so many other things that could have been said, but time and consciousness were limited. I regret that they were not said and written so much earlier. So some of the things. Dad always made me feel loved and appreciated. Dad always listened when I spoke and was actively interested in my life, wherever I was. Dad, you always came whenever I asked. No job was too big or too small for you. Dad, you were amazing, involved grandfather, and my kids adore you and Mum. Dad, you taught me what it was to work hard and take responsibility seriously. I don't think I will ever be able to work as hard as you. Dad, you loved me. You showed me nature and gave me an appreciation for the outdoors, which I've enjoyed all my life. Dad, you tried hard to teach me to learn from hard times and failures. And I think with age, I've gotten better at this. Although I've spent a lot of my adult life away from Dad, abroad, I had the privilege of working closely with him for nearly 10 years, which was a very rewarding experience for me. Here are some insights. Dad loved and lived to affirm people and always liked to tell people what they had done well or how good they were. He saw the best in all people. Dad was a compassionate man. He loved helping people in whichever way he could. He simply loved helping people. His love for people is shown by how he kept up the relationships with everyone for many years. Dad notices or sees and makes time for all people, regardless of how important they are or unimportant. Dad always listened to people. He understood that people wanted to be heard and gave them an opportunity to speak, regardless of who they were. He valued people and what they had to say. Dad always listened to people. He understood. My apologies. Dad was a man of energy and action, as Beth had already told us. He did it fast, he did it hard, and did it quick, and he did it efficiently and well. So, man of energy and action. He was a hard worker who liked to do things properly. I've had many conversations with people who had labored with him and had been grateful for the end of the day so that they could get some rest. Dad was humble. I cannot recall him boasting of any of his achievements, even though he had good reason to be very proud of his achievements over his lifetime. No job or work was beneath him, even if he was the boss. Although people followed Dad, and in this respect he was an amazing leader, he was often a reluctant leader and hated being the center of attention. Dad was a positive person and full of positive energy. Even in tough and difficult situations, as we've heard, he always saw the bright side and often spoke with invaluable lessons these times gave us. Dad was a visionary and a starter of things. We've just heard about that now. He had big ideas and lots of them. He could often see the big picture, and he was not afraid to fail by trying new ideas and going against the accepted ways of doing things. Dad was a man of integrity. He loved my mum unconditionally and showed me what it meant to be a good man and a husband. Dad was a thinker and a spiritual man, always searching for new meaning in life and wanting to share these findings. Life really was a journey in which he wanted to extract the maximum he could from it. He managed to impart this philosophy of life to so many, and that he meant it over many years. Dad loved nature, its beauty and being in it. Dad enjoyed sharing the teachings of nature to people. Dad loved silence. As much as he loved people, he enjoyed being alone and in silence, and this gave him the ability to discover new learnings. These times were nearly always early mornings. I'm so very proud that I have a father who had made such a meaningful contribution in so many people's lives. I've had the privilege of hearing this from so many people. He made a difference. Thank you very much.
Strikes me as there's a book called Leaders Eat Last, and that could be a book that summarizes Denis in so many ways. And I wonder, as he listens to these wonderful tributes from those who knew him best, if he wouldn't be a little bit embarrassed, because Denis strikes me as someone who was always so humble. And you know, humility is never something that can be claimed. The moment you claim humility, well, obviously you're not. It's a quality that is conferred, never claimed. And it's just wonderful to be conferring that awesome quality on your husband, on your dad, on your brother. So it's lovely to hear these tributes. Mandisa? While you're coming to the front, let me just put a follow-up to something Steve said with the poster, because revenge is best served cold, and it was some months later, and I know Doug and Catherine in Canada are streaming in, and Doug, you were the main instigator of this, not me. We were in a meeting with the YMCA staff, and it was a very small office. We were really crunched up together. We'd gone through an agenda. We used to have a property on their property, so there were a number of things to sort out. And then Denis very casually suggested it would be a great idea if our two staff teams got together for a braai or a game of volleyball or something like that, and everyone said, great idea. And he then casually suggested a day, probably 7 or 8 months down the line. So we all flipped through our diaries, in those days, big books. And as I got to that date, he had replicated the poster and put it in my diary. And I remember coming across this rather risque picture and being completely stunned and frozen long enough for the people on my left and right to see what was in my diary. And I slammed it all together shut. And I remember him going red and looked up, because there was only one perpetrator who did that. And Denis had big blue eyes, this most innocent look in his mouth, in his eyes, and, you know, just what's the problem? And again, he just never commented on it, just moved on, but that was Denis. You had to be very careful when you pranked him because of what was going to come back your way. Vanessa, thank you so much, and you speaking on behalf as well. Thank you.
Greetings. I'm so nervous, but Denis keeps proving that he will challenge you even when he's not here. This is a message from Farm Boards, where a close friend and co-worker. I have been thinking deeply about the relationship I had with Madala. Denis was always available to help, Denis always allowed people to express themselves freely and made time for everyone who needed it. I don't know how many times we worked physically together in different projects, from painting to gardening. He never elevated himself above anyone, even when you worked for him. I can attest to that. He called every man brew regardless of age. He was not shy to tackle anything, always with energy and a positive spirit. He was all about positive transformation, especially for young people, regardless of their background, race, or ethnicity. Denis ensured that life was meaningful, not only for him, but for all of us. He was always there, helping us climb the upward curve. Slight Urge, that was the book you introduced me to, and it was the beginning of life for us. If it was not for Denis, I don't think I would have built my kids their first home. The home was built physically together with Madala. In Denis, I found a father, and personally, I don't think I would have found the meaning of being a good person and a family man if it was not for Madala. He contributed a lot to everyone who was around him. I can proudly say I am one of his many positive products. His legacy lives even in my children. And this is from me. Denis had a heart of gold, very humble, and respected everyone. He accepted everyone as they were, and he never tried to force his beliefs on you. He valued the person on the inside and not what you had. Physically strong, but he never neglected mental health. He gave his time, wisdom, money, and all that he had to make this world a better place and uplift others. He was my mother's boss, but he never treated her like a servant. He treated her like family. He did the same with me and many more people. In Denis, I found a father. I never had the privilege to know my own biological father, but in Denis, I found a father. I can never count I can never count how many times Denis and Beth have been light to our family. I was depressed. I wanted to take my life, and Denis was the one who made me want to live. He gave me so many reasons to live. I am proud to say that today I'm a mother to a beautiful son because Denis taught me the value of life and what it meant to live. He left behind a legacy so great it's beyond measure. He had the gift of not judging others, but to let people be themselves without fear of being judged. There's a saying by the poet Rumi. It says, goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, because those who love with their hearts and soul, there is no such thing as separation. Thank you, Beth, and the whole family for sharing Denis with us. He will forever be in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ziggy, would you like to come up and share on behalf of Carl? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ziggy, and I've been privileged to know and love the Drennan family for some 50 years. My heart physically aches at the loss of a dear, dear friend, but it's also filled with a lot of gratitude. Gratitude at the opportunities Denis and the Days of Youth for Christ in Newcastle, Little Dorpy, granted me as a teenager to enjoy. The adventures which I would never have ventured on in the home I came from. He just motivated me, grew me, got me to grow, to love camping, hiking, and then the subsequent things were to lead others in those pursuits. I am so grateful. But Beth, I am especially grateful to you for your patience with all of us, the young people who over the many years invaded your home in Newcastle. I'm grateful for your kindness to me back then, for the many life lessons I learned from you whilst cooking delicious pots of soup at Libri on a shoestring budget. I value the chats you and I have had recently around programs and libraries you set up to encourage young people to read. You, Craig and Steve, you sacrifice so much for the likes of young people like me, young people those days. May you, Craig, Steve, and your family experience love, peace, and grace as you mourn losing your soulmate, your father, the grandfather, Denis. I have been asked by Beth to read out a letter from a very, very dear friend here today, Colleen. It starts with a quote, then some words taken from a recent voice note she sent to Denis, and then I'll read Carl's letter. Rolf Emerson said, "To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded." I'm going to read it again. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. Carl says in the voice note, "Denis, when I met you in 1981, I was given the space to breathe, and my life became so much easier. And for this, I'm forever grateful to you, my friend." Her letter. "Dear Beth, Craig, and Steve, the loss I'm feeling is immense, and I only lost a friend and a mentor. The loss you have of a beloved husband, a father, grandfather, must be utterly heartbreaking and overwhelming. Denis was a life changer when he was here in this world, and I know he will be no less in the life beyond. On Thursday night, I had a dream that he had passed away, and we were all sad and mourning him. In the next scene, I was asleep, and he woke me up and said, 'Hey sis, I've got stuff to share with you. There is so much to know.' And he had that grin filled with light and joy that he always had when he had read or heard something to feed his soul. I know he is in such a place of answers, filled with joy and understanding. If he could, he would come back and take us with him to the heaven he knew was waiting for him, as sharing himself with us was his superpower. Much love to you all, Colleen."
Before giving you an opportunity to say something for yourself, let me read out 2 tributes as well that have come in. This is from Doug and Catherine Rochelle in Canada. "Few people I've known could fully face and engage you in conversation or in silence with such unflinching attention, leaving you feeling you mattered, your presence and your journey validated. Be it Denis's befriending this less than secure teenager in Canada to invite me to work with teenagers in South Africa. Be it in guiding a group of teens abseiling from a bridge over the N2 whilst those not abseiling earnestly watching for police vehicles on the horizon. Be it huddled with teenagers listening to their home hurts or church wrestles or their leaning into Christ. Be it helpful specific directions to me while leading teens north along the wild coast. Keep the sea on your right, Doug. He gave me similar directions, but the sea was on the left. It's a miracle those kids ever got back. Be it freely shared chicken a la king or a braai or a bed in Denis and Beth's home. To be in Denis and Beth's orbits was to be humanized. This one from another friend, Sam Paul. It is with sadness and a deep crevice left in my heart that I send you this message of a friend and brother that I will surely miss not having around in the flesh. a friend whom I could laugh, confide, and talk with just about anything. We were friends from the 80s when apartheid was the order of the day. I shared my anger about white privilege, my distaste towards bigotry. He listened without judgment and offered his genuine friendship, love, and wisdom, which changed my perspective towards bigotry and disdain felt for white people, because he was an example of the change we would receive a few years down the road. He visited me occasionally, and we shared stories of the decades that passed. He changed my mindset from anger to respect for God's multicultural community. For this I will be forever grateful. You are a diamond in the rough. You will always be remembered for your kind, genuine, gentle, and loving spirit. You are a proud father and a wonderful husband to Beth. You will be missed, my dear brother. Rest well, and I will see you soon. I committed to memory some time ago without knowing why, but it's dawned on me that this is why. It's a wonderful poem by A.E. Housman, who was a 19th century English poet. And the part that resonates and I think is relevant for us today was simply, here I sit on the level sand between the sea and the land. What shall I build or write against the fall of night? Be it Troy or Rome, I fend against the foam, or my own name to stand when I depart for yea. And as I think of Denis, it strikes me that he was neither concerned with his own name standing, and yet you can hear the result of not being concerned with that today, nor was he concerned ever with building a Troy or a Rome. And then it occurred to me that you are his Troy and his Rome, because Denis poured himself into you, into people. And so I'm going to invite you as the Troys and Romes that Denis left behind to. If you would like to share a short story, you're welcome to come up to the front if you don't think your voice is going to project loud enough. But if you'd like to stand where you are and speak, this is your opportunity. Come on up and you can.
Greetings, everyone. I totally escaped this one. To the Drennan family, thank you for giving us a father that we thought he was just a mentor to us. I'll try and speak for many who are not here today, who Denis found us when we broken. The man lifted us up to be husbands and men today. I met Denis when I was in grade 8, doing fire breaks at Lapri with my broken English. The man believed in me, threw me in the deep end, letting me facilitate a camp with him of girls who were speaking proper English. And then in the middle of a debrief, he sneaked out and ran away. And then I was left being a center of attention in the whole circle of a campfire. Then I had to blur my way into facilitating this debrief. Today, it's the bread and butter in my life. I run a company that does facilitation as a matter of skills and expertise. I can't believe the man who gave me such bread. In the last 2 weeks, I've had to watch him in his weakest state in the bed in the hospital, but I was grateful to be touching his hands and feel him while he was breathing in his warmth. And on top of it, he handed me to his son, Craig, to teach me how to manage finances and administration. And him and his wife were there for me in the darkest hours when I was living in the street of Durban. I don't know what happened in the middle of nowhere. They decided to put 300 rand in my account for 6 months in that hardest of time. I don't know where they got that from. That time was a savior to my life. I'm a father today, my husband today. I call myself an entrepreneur, a businessman today because of this family. So, go well, Mdala. Tell God you did your godly work in this earth, and you must see what he does with his judgments. Thank you so much. Thank you, Beth. I came to your house and you made the bed I slept in to feel like I'm the only one who slept in it. And it was made for me in your house with your tea, and how you let us be your children while we were taking your husband away from you. And the stories that he shared with us about your relationship taught us how to love the other gender as the male. He kept saying, my friend Beth, my dear Beth, and we learned so much from that. So you remain precious to us. Please don't hesitate to call us like you will do to your sons. We won't take offense. We are here, and if anything in the legacy, Steve, please shout out. Thank you, everybody.
Afternoon, brothers and sisters. I think all the tributes we've been hearing from this dear brother are a challenge to all of us. I'm thinking of the words of the poet. He put it like this: we shall pass through this world but once. Any good that I can do, any blessing that I can be, let me do it now. Let me not put it off, for I shall not pass this way again. And I think all that we've been hearing from so many different people have summed up very clearly the life of dear brother Denis Brennan. As the scripture said, he has gone to be with Christ, which is far better. Father, we thank you for the life of this dear brother. Bless his dear family, Lord, and be with him at such a time as this. And we know that, Lord, by your grace, we shall all meet together in our Father's home and give to him all praise and glory and honor. And all God's people said, amen. Thank you, my brother.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, family. Hi, Beth. Steve and Craig, wonderful to be with you today. My name is Dean. I'm a Youth for Christ director living down in George, where we've lived for quite a number of years. At this current time, I'm also the acting national director for Youth for Christ, and so it's wonderful to be here and to represent Youth for Christ with you. The memories we've heard today are like a cinema. all the images that flow through our minds. Just such a wonderful afternoon of sharing memories. I have a few of my own, very briefly. I met Denis in the very early years of ministry. I was a young YFC director in Durban, and really trying to find my feet. It was a difficult year. Denis was a mentor to me during that time, and at the end of that year, Denis rescued me. Moving into 1981, my new wife and I moved to Pietermaritzburg, and our first few days were in Beth and Denis's house, and thank you so much for sharing that with us, just to help us find our feet. It was a wonderful time working with Denis, getting to know him, spending time with him, seeing the ministry develop. When I think about working with Denis, three things come to mind. He listened, and he encouraged, and he supported. And that was so helpful for us. I mean, what do you do with a weird American who comes to stay and work with you? You have to do those things. Listen and try and figure out and encourage and support. During those years, few years, it was 3 years we spent in Pietermaritzburg. The Saturday night clubs, one of you spoke about the various ministries that took place there. Saturday night clubs, also the roller rink evenings at the YMCA, the Youth for Christ rallies that took place, the new offices that were built. We started off, Denis and I and my wife Lori, we started off in the basement of a home in the first couple of months in the 80s there, and then the office at the YMCA was established. Campus Life Club that we were a part of, that Denis just encouraged us in, and then there was the Wild Coast, the hikes that we did with him. And the one story I will just share quickly was about the hike we were taking, and we saw the clouds come, and then it poured. It started pouring. The rain just came down. But there was a little house in the distance, and to my surprise, Denis said, "Come on, guys, let's go." And we went there, and Denis found a small little rock and broke the window into the house. We broke into the house. We spent the night there, had a nice dry evening, and Denis left 50 Rand in the house with a note, say, "Thank you, sorry." It was just unforgettable. The trip that we took with the YFC staff to Lesotho, an outward bound course, wonderful experience to share that with Denis and the other staff. Back in those days, we used the term macho, and Denis was the macho man. And some of the things you described, the memories that were shared, bears that up. So I just want to, on behalf of the Youth for Christ board, staff, volunteers around the country, just want to say that we are here to honor and to give a tribute to Denis's life and the long years of YFC service and ministry. So we say thank you to Denis, thank you, Beth, and thank you, Steve and Craig and family. God bless you.
Thanks, Gina. You've lived here so long, I don't know about the American part, but the weird still fits, so that's fine. So.
Hello, everybody. Hello, dear Drennans, Craig. My name is Yvonne Spain, and nobody's mentioned Youth for Christ and the lovely people and the fun that we had. And he has brought us together today to see those faces and to remember the fun we had, but It was during apartheid, and Denis was courageous. And I encountered him because we worked, not Denis yet, with children on the street. Nobody cared about those kids. Everybody was frightened of them. And I worked with Dr. Neil McCarrow, with the kids on the street, trying to get them home, get them to school, get the government to see them. And we had a little bit of money, but we had no staff. And Denis said, we will take care of the kids on the street. And we handed over all our funds, and eventually we, through Denis, managed to raise funds through the business community, and we had 2 community workers on the street. Hello, Phil. We had just a great time, and Phil's put me right off. What I wanted to say is that Denis made me feel at home at Youth for Christ, and it was very funny because I wasn't young and I wasn't a Christian, but we've talked about how embracing he was of people. And I just want to say that his brand of leadership, servant leadership, helped me when I was in a leadership position. I will never forget your father, your husband, Beth. Thank you. Thank you, Keith.
Thanks, Yvonne. Last call. Well, I know it's been exhausting for the family emotionally, and you've been fully present, and these words will take time to resonate, and they'll be left with you. I'd encourage you to support Beth going forward, and of course the family. I've got a thank you to read, and then really we'll close off. Beth wrote this: a very heartfelt thank you to all the family and friends for their love, support, and kindness. I feel like I have been wrapped in a blanket of love. A special thank you to Pat and Kerry, who have looked after our precious dog Tudu. At this time, he hates being left alone. To Sally Barrett and Pam Harris, who so kindly stepped in and did the flowers, I'm truly grateful. I know if Denis were here in person, he had definitely whipped that driftwood. Thank you to Amber Valley for all their help during this stressful time, and of course for all those who have catered so magnificently at the back that we will get to shortly. There's a Chinese wisdom story about a woman who loses her 8-year-old son, and she goes throughout the village desperate and broken, and no one can really do anything or help her. And someone suggests she goes and sees the wise man, and she does that. She lays her boy in front of him, and she takes on his counsel, which is to go back into the village, go knock on every door, and share her story. And she was to bring back a mustard seed for every home that hadn't been visited by death. And of course, the wise man knew that she would return empty-handed. And I think using that story as a bit of an analogy, what you've given today through your words and being here are a bunch full of mustard seeds that will sustain and support Beth and her family going forward. So thank you for that. Thank you again for your presence and your kindness and your empathy. Beth, I'd like to just give a blessing specifically to you and your family. It's an old Irish blessing. It has to do with farming, and I think Denis would appreciate this form of prayer. And we know it. It's simply this: may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sunshine warm your face and the rain fall gently on your fields. And until you meet Denis again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Folks, thank you very much. Tea and refreshments will be served at the back. Thank you.